Marry whomever you like. Then marry a beggar off the road for all I care. Only understand that if you refuse Sir Crail, you will not have a penny of mine, nor a roof, nor a name worth having." The man standing in the shadow of the churchyard wall heard the whole of it, for the woman's mother had a carrying voice, and no shame at all about using it in a public lane. He had come to Millbrook on foot, as was his habit, a tall man in a plain worn coat, dust on his boots, no ring on his hand, a walking stick and a battered hat, his only marks of gentility, which is to say none. He looked, to any eye, exactly like what the county would call a beggar of the better sort, a broken-down traveller, a nobody. This was, he had learned over several years of doing it, extraordinarily useful. A man learns the truth of a place when the place believes he does not matter. His name, though no one in Millbrook knew it, was Gabriel Ravensworth, and he was the Duke of Ashenvale, and he owned more of the north of England than any man living. He was 36, and he had spent the better part of a decade being flattered, hunted, courted, and lied to by every fortune-hunting mother and marriageable daughter within reach of his name, until he had come to despair of ever knowing whether a single soul on earth valued him for anything but his acres. So he had taken to walking. In a plain coat, under no name, he moved through his own country and the counties beyond it, and he watched, and he listened, and he saw people as they truly were when they thought no one who mattered was looking. And in the churchyard lane of Millbrook he was watching a young woman refuse to be sold. Her name, he would learn, was Isolde Marsh. She stood very straight before her furious mother, a girl of perhaps 22, plainly but neatly dressed, with a face that was not fashionable but was something better than fashionable, clear-eyed, honest, and at this moment blazing with a controlled and magnificent anger. "Sir Crail is 60 years old, mother," Isolde said, "and he buried 2 wives before their time, and everyone in the county knows how. You would sell me to him for his money and call it my duty. I will not do it. I would sooner marry a beggar off the road, as you say, and be poor and free, than be rich and Sir Crail's third grave. Then do it." Her mother shrieked past all sense now. "Marry the first ragged wretch you find. See how you like poverty. And do not come crawling back to me when you are starving in a ditch, for I will shut the door in your face." And she swept away up the lane toward the great house of the Marshes, leaving her daughter standing alone and shaking by the churchyard wall. Gabriel had not meant to speak. He was a watcher, watchers did not interfere. But he had spent 10 years being courted for his money, and he had just watched a girl refuse a fortune rather than sell herself, and something in him, some starved and disbelieving thing, moved him out of the shadow of the wall before he had decided to move. "Forgive me," he said. "I could not help but overhear. You spoke well. It is not every day one hears a person choose freedom over a fortune." Isolde turned, startled, and took in his dusty coat, his battered hat, his walking stick, took in, that is, a beggar of the better sort, and to his surprise she did not recoil. She laughed, a short, unsteady laugh with tears still bright in it. "You heard all that. Then you heard my mother offer me a beggar off the road, and here you are." She wiped her eyes and looked at him properly, and something rueful and reckless came into her face. "You must think us a fine mad family. I think," Gabriel said carefully, "that you are the sanest person I have met in a very long while." They fell to talking, there in the lane, the way strangers sometimes do when one of them has just been cracked open by grief. She told him things she would never have told a suitor. Because he was a beggar, he understood. Because he did not matter. Because there was no fortune in him to guard herself against. She told him she had wanted to be a schoolmistress, and had not been permitted. She told him she loved the North Country and had never seen more of it than Millbrook. She told him she was afraid, now, that she had ruined herself with that speech in the lane, that her mother meant it, that she would in fact be turned out with nothing. And Gabriel Ravensworth, Duke of Ashenvale, listening to this honest, brave, penniless girl talk to him freely precisely because she believed he was nobody, felt the ground shift beneath his dusty boots. "Marry me," he said. Isolde stared at him. "You said you would sooner marry a beggar off the road than sell yourself to Sir Crail," Gabriel said, and he was faintly astonished to hear how steady his own voice was. "Here is a beggar off the road. I have a plain coat and a walking stick and not much else that you can see, and I am asking you honestly. It would spite your mother, who deserves spiting, It would keep you from Sir Crail. And he hesitated. I am not so poor as I look. I have a small living, enough for a modest house, bread and a fire and books. I would not let you starve. I would let you teach if you wished it. I would ask nothing of you but that you speak to me as freely as you have spoken this last half hour, for I find I have not been spoken to so honestly in 10 years. It was madness, and they both knew it was madness, and perhaps that was why she did it. She had just thrown a fortune away in a lane. She was drunk on the recklessness of having chosen her own life for once. She looked at the dusty stranger who had listened to her as no suitor ever had, and she thought, he could see her think it, that a beggar who listened was worth more than a baronet who counted her like coin. You are quite mad, Isolde said. Very likely, Gabriel agreed. My mother will disown me. There will be no dowry. There will be nothing. You understand that. You would be marrying a girl with empty hands. Empty hands, said the Duke of Ashenvale, are the only hands in this county I've ever been able to trust. She married him 3 weeks later, in a plain ceremony, in a plain gown, with no one from her family present, for her mother had indeed meant every word and had shut the great door of the marshes in her daughter's face. Isolde walked out of Millbrook on the arm of a beggar, with everything she owned in one small trunk, laughing and terrified and free. She did not, of course, understand where they were going. They travelled north together, and Gabriel let the deception run a little longer than he ought, because he was a coward about exactly one thing in the world, and that was this. He did not want it to end. For 3 days on the road he was simply a man his wife had married for himself. They rode in a hired trap. They stayed in plain inns. She darned his coat by the fire and scolded him for the state of his boots and told him her whole history and asked, gently, about his, and he told her as much truth as he dared, that he had grown up lonely, that he had money troubles of a kind she would not guess, that he had been hunted all his life by people who wanted things from him. She held his hand across the rough table and said she was sorry, and that she wanted nothing from him at all, and that this, at least, he need never fear from her. Every word she spoke made it harder to confess what he was. On the 4th day the road began to climb through country that Isolde exclaimed over, great sweeping fells, dark woods, a silver river, the north she had always longed to see. And then, as the light was going gold in the late afternoon, they came over a rise, and below them in a broad green valley stood a house. It was not a house, it was a palace. A vast honey-coloured pile of a place, turreted and glittering, its many windows catching the westering sun like 100 small fires, set in gardens that ran down to a lake, ringed by a park that stretched, quite literally, beyond the sight of the eye. Isolde caught her breath at the sheer beauty of it. Look, she said. Oh, look, whose can it be? It must belong to a great lord, a duke at the least. Imagine living there. Imagine having so much. She laughed, delighted and unenvious, and squeezed his hand. And here are we going to our little living somewhere past it, I suppose, to our house with a fire and some books. I would not trade, you know. I would rather have you and the books than all of that, and a man who counts me like coin. Gabriel stopped the trap. His heart was going very hard. He had rehearsed this moment for 3 days and found no gentle way through it, and now the moment was here and there was nothing for it but the truth. Isolde, he said, there is something I have not told you. I have deceived you, and I must tell you how, and I am afraid, I am truly afraid of how you will look at me when I have. She turned to him, alarmed by his tone. What is it? Whatever it is, that house, Gabriel said, and his voice was not quite steady. You asked whose it is. It is mine. It is called Ashenvale. I am not a beggar, Isolde. I have no small living and no modest house. I am Gabriel Ravensworth, the Duke of Ashenvale, and I own that valley, and the fells behind it, and a very great deal of the north of England besides. I have deceived you from the first word I spoke to you in the churchyard lane, and I have brought you home to a house you cannot yet imagine, as a duchess you never agreed to be. For a long moment Isolde said nothing at all. The golden light lay over the impossible house below. A curlew called somewhere on the fell. Then, to his complete astonishment, her face crumpled, not with joy as any of the fortune hunters would have shown, but with something like betrayal, and her eyes filled, and she pulled hand out of his. You lied to me, she said, all this while. I told you everything, everything. I told you things I never told a soul, because you were a beggar, Because there was nothing to guard against. Because for once in my life I was safe, to be honest. And the whole time you were a duke. The whole time you were exactly the kind of man I have spent my life being sold to. You let me think. Her voice broke. You let me don your coat and pity your money troubles and hold your hand and feel sorry for you, and all the while you were the richest man in the north playing at being poor for your own amusement. Not for amusement, Gabriel said, low and urgent. No, listen to me, please. For 10 years I've been hunted for exactly what lies in that valley. 10 years of mothers and daughters smiling at my acres and never once at me. I could not tell any more whether a single soul on earth would want me for myself. So I took to walking the country as a nobody, to see people true. And in that lane I saw a girl throw away a fortune rather than sell herself, and speak to a beggar as though he mattered, and I did not think that is the truth of it. I only knew that for the first time in 10 years someone had looked at the man and not the money, and I could not bear to lose it by naming what I was. Every day I meant to tell you. Every day I was more afraid, because every day you were kinder. And I knew the moment I told you, you would look at me the way you are looking at me now, as though I were one of them. Isolde looked at him, tears on her face, and he watched her wrestle with it, the deception and the reason for it, and the 3 honest days on the road that she now had to weigh against the lie. Did you mean it? She said at last. Any of it. The road. What you said about empty hands being the only ones you could trust. Did you mean that, or was it a Duke's clever game? I meant every word of it, Gabriel said, more than I have ever meant anything. Isolde, I did not marry you to add you to Ashenvale. I married you because you were the one person who wanted nothing from me, and I have never in my life been so rich as I was these 3 days on the road, darning thread and all. If you tell me you cannot forgive the lie, I will not blame you. I will take you anywhere you wish. I will settle enough on you to make you free of me and free of your mother and free of Sir Crail forever. And you need never see that house or my face again. But I could not carry you across its threshold with the lie still in my mouth. You have been honest with me every hour since the chard. You deserved my honesty, even this late, even badly done. For a long moment the girl who had married a beggar to spite her mother sat looking down at the palace that was, impossibly, now her home. Then she wiped her eyes and let out a long, shaken breath, and a corner of her mouth turned up despite everything. My mother, she said unsteadily, told me I would starve in a ditch. She said I would come crawling back. She shut the door in my face and told the whole county I had married a beggar off the road. She began helplessly to laugh, a wet, incredulous laugh that shook her whole body. And instead I am the Duchess of Ashenvale. Oh, Gabriel, oh, you wicked, wicked man. Do you understand what you have done? You have made me the greatest lady in the north, and you have made my mother the greatest fool. And you did it by pretending to be exactly the thing she cast me out for. I did not plan it as a revenge, Gabriel said carefully. No, Isolde agreed, laughing and crying at once. But the heavens did, and I mean to thank them for it every Sunday of my life. She looked at him, and the betrayal had gone out of her face now, and something warmer and steadier had come to take its place. Not the dazzle of the house below, he was relieved to see, but the same clear, honest regard she had turned on a beggar in a lane. You great fool. You could have told me. Did you truly think a woman who refused Sir Crail's fortune would refuse yours out of spite, when I'd already married the man and loved him? Gabriel went very still. Loved him? Loathed you, Isolde said. The beggar, the dusty man who listened. I married him for spite, and somewhere on that road I stopped marrying him for spite. I did not know you were a duke, Gabriel. I want you to remember that, always, when the doubt comes back, because it will come back. I can see already what 10 years has done to you. I loved you when I thought you had nothing. Whatever else that house down there is worth, it can never buy that, and it can never take it away. It was always freely given, and Gabriel Ravensworth, Duke of Ashenvale, who had walked his own country in a beggar's coat for 10 years hunting for exactly one person who would say those words and mean them, reached out and gathered his wife's honest empty hands into his own, and found that they were the richest thing he had ever held. Come home, Duchess, he said when he could speak. Come and see the house you married a beggar to avoid. And I promise you, I swear it on every acre in that valley, you will never, as long as you live, be counted like coin again. He carried her over the threshold of Ashenvale that evening, past a household astonished into speechlessness, and he loved her all the days of his life exactly as he had loved her on the road, for the honest heart of her, and not for anything she brought but herself. And Isolde's mother, when the news reached her, was said to have required a great deal of air, and to have written a long and affectionate letter to the daughter she had disowned, which the new Duchess of Ashenvale read aloud to her husband by the fire, and which the two of them enjoyed very much indeed.